Hey, welcome to Lead Full. My name is Chesley Lunday. I am your host today. Here's the deal. We know that life, no matter how successful you are, can sometimes be an exercise in futility. And we want to help you defeat futility in your lives. We want to help you develop fulfillment, and we want to help you change the world, because we know this: when leaders are fulfilled, they fill the world with hope. Now, let's get ready to Lead Full. I am fired up about our next guest. Her name is Gentry. She runs the Arise Women's Network here in Phoenix, Arizona, my backyard, and she's an up-and-comer. She's gonna be on the scene blowing up pretty quickly, and I'm just gonna say it right here first, right? And so we get to have a conversation with her live today in a coffee shop. It's gonna be great. You'll hear it all in the background, but we're gonna have a fun conversation about identity, about unity, and the Enneagram. Here we go with Gentry. Hey, so we're here, and I did the fancy intro already, so fantastic. We just get to go right away. Right, so for those of you that didn't hear like 2 seconds ago, this is Gentry. Yeah. How you doing?
So great. It's fun to be in the room with you and hanging out. This is pretty cool.
This is the first time we've done any like actual live thing that I'm not like seeing someone on a screen. But that's what we get to do when, you know, we live like right next to each other. So
it's
that's
so nice.
Cool. So how are you doing?
So great. This is honestly just such a joy just to wake up and get to hang out with some friends, meet each other in person,
exactly.
Just talk about whatever the Lord has in store for us today. So I'm excited.
That's cool. So one of the things that we talked about, you said you have a couple things that are near and dear to your heart. So identity, unity, and obviously the Enneagram. So I want to take us through that journey together. But so how did you get started speaking, and kind of tell us your story, and then how those three kind of like started forming in your life as a passion?
Yeah, well, honestly, I never would have thought that I would be a speaker. Ever. Okay, I even remember in college having to just introduce myself to a class. And I would stand up, and I was on the volleyball team, and some of my other teammates were in the classroom, and I would stand up and I was like, you had to tell your name, what year you were, and like one fun fact about you. And I remember just being like, Gentry, I was a sophomore and I love the Green Bay Packers. And I like just sat down so fast, and I was like rushed, like literally red, flushed, like not okay. And my teammates were like, you're like, you said that so fast. Like, are you okay? You were just introducing yourself. And I'm like, I hate speaking in public. I hated it. So it was very funny of God to bring these things around and really have to push past your fears and a lot of times where you would never even think that. So after I gave my life fully to the Lord at around 23, 24, I started working at our church, and my dad had planted a church here in Phoenix. And
so you're a PK too?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Are you a PK?
I am. Yes.
Oh,
preacher's kid. For all of you that don't know what that is.
Preacher's kid. Lord help everybody who has to deal with us.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
The things we've gone through, you know. But yes, I am a preacher's kid, and I was the crazy preacher's kid. There's the angels, and then the not so angelic.
Yeah. See, I was a mixture. I was a mixed bag.
Really?
Yes, I really was. No, not this one. I'm the interviewer.
Flip the script. Sorry, I just assumed it's like we're having a normal conversation. I was like, I want to know about this. I kind of feel like that sometimes too.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyways, I really went my own way for a while. I just definitely went away from the church I was still there on Sundays, but for the most part, like I didn't want anything to do with church. I just wanted to honor my parents because we were still close. Like I still loved my family and I wanted to honor them, so I still showed up.
Right.
But I was still like living in the world every other day of the week, and sometimes even on Sunday nights.
Right.
Like, you know, it was like just Sunday mornings I was at church. So and it got pretty exhausting trying to live in both worlds. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Lord allows that because we need to make those decisions of which way we're going to choose to live and to live into that fully, and I really believe that after a season of depression and almost taking my own life, like God really met me in that space and said, it's time to make that choice. Like you've been trying to do both for so long. And so when I did make that choice, and about 9 months later, I had totally really my life looked totally different. My friend groups, where I was going, I really actually didn't have a lot of friends anymore for a season because I had to change everything. And my dad started this church, and he's like, do you want to help? And I'm 23, 24, and I'm like, well, I'll help for a little bit, until I figure out what I'm really going to do with my life. Right. And so anyways, out of that, I actually wasn't paid at first, and then it was part-time, and then it was full-time, and then it was outreach lead, and I started women's ministry coordinating, and then I had women in our group that said, Allie, I think it's time. We value intergenerational things. Yeah. So they're like, we need your voice. That's leading good. In our women's group as well. And I'm like, no. Yeah. I will coordinate everything, but I don't need to teach.
But I'm not speaking. Okay. Joke's on you.
Yes. I was like, nice try, but no. And so we divvied it up, so I only had 2 really teaching ones throughout that Bible study. But I remember teaching the last one, and there was just this, I knew it when I was speaking, and it just, what I call that thin layer between you and heaven when you're doing what you're really called to do. I just couldn't explain it. And then the people in the room were affirming it, which you need your community to affirm. Right. But you feel like God's calling you, especially if it's in the church. They're like, wow, no, you're not a speaker. And I'm like, no, God told me. And everybody's
have you ever been around where people are like, I'm such a great teacher. And you're like, no, that guy's asleep on the second row.
I know. And it's so great to, that's why we need community.
Yes. So you can't have hubris and get by with it.
Yes. We also have to be open for our community to speak into our lives too.
That's true. That's very true.
So as I started walking in that and moving, kind of just taking steps, I didn't really know what I was really doing half the time, but I watched my dad preach my whole life. So I started to learn how to do that, started taking courses, started going to conferences on speaking, but really it just developed from that into getting into my dad made a way. He just said, I remember I never had felt called to preach. Mm-hmm. I knew I was called to speak and write.
Okay.
And then 4 years ago, I remember the moment where God was like, you're called to preach. And I was in Houston at a conference about speaking and stuff. And it said that preaching is logic set on fire. Mm-hmm. And I read this whole piece about how it's the integrity of a person, it's the mind, and then it needs to drop into the heart. And I'm like, I'm super overanalytical. I'm extremely passionate. And I'm like, I'm not crazy. I'm actually called to preach. God actually gave me these things so that I could go out, take the research, take the passion and the heart behind it, the mind and the heart, the truth and the spirit, and just bring them together and bring the word. So I said, Dad, I think I'm called to preach. He goes, I know. Yeah. He's like, I was waiting for God to tell you.
Where was the cognitive dissonance between speaking and preaching, though, for you?
I think it was the Sunday morning. It doesn't even have to be on Sunday morning, because now I speak other places and I know that there's preaching, because I think that there's teaching. Yeah. And I think that's more whenever I was thinking, I was called to speak and write, I really thought that I was only called to teach and write. Teach through the Bible, Bible study. And I think I love doing it. But I do believe there's a difference between teaching and preaching. Okay. I feel like there's a delivery way, and there's also a classroom feel of learning, and then there's also preaching. I feel as we're learning, and now I'm setting it in your heart, the Holy Spirit just oh, okay, that was a preach mode. But I do believe that when people are speaking, they can go in and out of both. Yeah. But I never thought but I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a preacher. Until later. And so anyways, that's a long story, but for my dad to be and he's like, do you want to preach in our next series in about a month? I'm like, okay, whoa.
A little too quick.
Yeah, but I knew it was time to say yes. And so I've just been saying yes since then, and God's been doing fun things. So
that's awesome. So you skirted over this part, but obviously a big part of your journey was depression. And obviously I've had friends that went through it. I would say I went through it after I came out of, I was a lead pastor of a church in Omaha, Nebraska, and had to help shut the church down. And coming out of that for 9 months, it was just like I was trying to live as a student pastor and still dealing with all of that baggage during the week. And so I know how hard that was, but what was that experience like for you? What did that teach you?
Well, even taking in what you were just saying, I think a lot of the ways that I felt in that season, and to be honest, I can still lean towards that. So I don't want people to think like, oh, well, I was depressed and all of that, and then I gave my life fully to the Lord, and I've never dealt with it again.
Right.
Because I think within the church, we can almost say it and assume it, or people might think that that's what it's supposed to be like. And for some of us, that's a little bit of the way we're wired.
Yeah, you're Enneagram 4, so...
I am an Enneagram 4. I was like, when are we going to go into
we're going to end up getting there.
We're going to go into yay! Yes, and so like we do, some people can say, yeah, I feel this often, and other people I've talked to would say, I've never even experienced depression. I don't really know what you're talking about when you say it. I know people who have. So I would say like we need to be aware of our makeup. We need to be aware even of our like chemical imbalances maybe. Like,
yeah, I don't wear concealer.
Yeah.
No, I'm just...
Exactly.
I know what you...
Yes, we gotta be aware of all these things. Take care of it, cover it up. And so, but honestly, I think that it is, when I go through those seasons, but I've been able to pinpoint it, and this is the reason why identity is so huge for me, is because in those seasons, I really feel like maybe a piece of what I put my identity in was taken away from me, or it wasn't fulfilling me. So I was like, oh, well, I'm the pastor's kid. Oh, I'm this person's girlfriend. Oh, I'm on like varsity volleyball or college volleyball. Oh, I travel the world and get to do all of these things. And yes, all of these things are fun. I mean, whether people are married or they have children, like those are a piece of you, of course, and that's what you do. But I think sometimes when we make that our identity, like really put pretty much all of our eggs in those baskets, instead of being like, who has God made me to be? In all situations, no matter what I'm doing. And then I think out of that, we get to do a lot of things. But I realized in those seasons, I was seeking affirmation from the world, approval. I was comparing and coming up short all the time, it felt like. And I was just in such a season of depression because I was trying to find anything that would give me purpose. Pretty much anywhere else except for what God had given me already and instilled in me, and he wanted to reveal that to me. So I do think it's sometimes if we're going through those seasons, we need to, there's a lot of things that go on and why we get into those seasons. But I think a lot of times that really does pinpoint on our identity if we start to take back all the layers of it, like where are we putting our identity in this moment? Because it can feel a little unnerving at times and to not be able to tangibly hold it. But also why I'm passionate about helping people learn how God created them.
Absolutely. So identity is a huge piece. We talk about it a little bit on my previous podcasts, where we, as leaders, we tend to find our identity in what we do and not who we are. And so if you strip all that away, though, what do you have left? And it becomes a difficult season if you're working through that. And for me, being a pastor in Omaha, like I had to work through the fact that I thought I would die there. I thought the church, that I would get the church out of the rut. It was massively in debt when they hired me, and I thought I would be the guy to build it up, and then I was not. But lead pastor was one of those things I had been working towards for years, and thought, hey, I made it, and now that was my identity, and then that wasn't my identity anymore, and having to deal with that. And I think when we hold on to the identity piece of what we do is who we are, the fallout of that is where we end up losing our sense of self, and where we move into depression a lot of times. So how did you climb out of that?
I would say at the worst point, because I feel like there's been a couple of points.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
At the worst point before I really gave my life fully over to God and said, okay, I completely surrender here. I honestly can't, I know that people have asked me for handles, like, how did you get out of it? And I'm like, I was so desperate and to the point of truly like about to take my life that Jesus met me in that walk-in closet at my condo where I was about to, and his presence met me in a way that I hadn't experienced yet, an overwhelming peace that I hadn't known in at least years, if not ever. And I really felt like I heard the spirits tell me it's time to make a choice. Like, follow me wholeheartedly. Like, I love you. So follow me wholeheartedly, or like go the other way, just leave my name out of it. And my Holy Spirit truth bombs.
Leave my name out of it.
I know.
So wow.
I think it's like a respect thing. Of him being like,
he was your savior, but now he's like, hey, I was your savior. Now I want you to see me as your Lord.
Yeah.
As your master.
Wow. Yeah. Exactly. And it's not appealing to the world for us to be out in the world and being like, hey, Jesus loves you, and also I'm here with you partying and doing all the things. Because I used to be like that. Like, I'd be out partying and be like, that Jesus loves you. And I was just like, why am I evangelizing in the middle of
They're probably asking themselves the same question.
It was this chick. Her life looks no different than mine. And at least I don't feel guilty about it.
Right.
It's a real thing though that people do, because I felt like all of a sudden I was like, oh Lord, please don't come back while I'm doing this. It was just, I don't know what it was, but I do feel like there is a point where we have to make a choice, and if we're going to go live the ways of the world, it's confusing to the world for the church to continue to live like the world, but then to speak Jesus at the same time. Yeah, it just gets confusing, and I saw it as a respect thing to the Lord, like being like, okay, I'm going to respect you enough. I know you're real, so. But anyways, I got up off of that floor of my closet, and I really I went to my bed and just opened up to Genesis 1. I just started reading. I didn't even know what else to do. Because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm a pastor's kid. I know all the books of the Bible. I know the song. I know these things. But it was just the only thing I could come to is open the Bible and start reading truth and replacing it. And you open up to Genesis and you learn about your identity. It's right there at the beginning. And then also that shame piece of brokenness that came in at the beginning. And so we have this identity piece right there. After I realize and I'm in this deep depression, God starts to reveal to me and remind me really who I was made to be. So I think that those handles, I know for me it was such a supernatural, if you will, experience that it's hard for me to tell people, how did you do it? I was like, well, God showed up. You just did it.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But there were things that I did later. I mean, I've gone through bouts of depression since then. And I think being aware of red flags, for me, if I can't sing worship music, I know it sounds so weird. I'm like, what's going on here? Because I love music. But I'm like, okay, if I want to start being reclusive and I don't want to be around people and I just want to be home all the time, or there's certain triggers that I'm like, Allie, go hang out with people. Don't you do it. Don't you do it, because you're depleted. And yes, we need to rest and take time alone.
And you're an introvert, right?
I am an introvert.
You couldn't tell it sitting here, but yeah.
That's what's confusing to most people.
They're
like, there's no way. I'm like, I'm an outgoing introvert, and I really believe there are shy extroverts. So
absolutely.
So I am an outgoing introvert, but it's good for me. But I can go into that whole, and then you're just replaying everything. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. And so when your track and your brain starts going that way, you got to be around people who can speak truth into you. So isolation is what the enemy wants from us especially when we're depressed, because it'll keep us there. So community is everything in those moments, even when you don't want to. I'm telling you, there are moments, even relatively recently, where I was like, I don't want to be with people, but I need to. I know the flag. I know this red flag. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go sit with my people.
I was dealing with that yesterday, so we're going to get into the Enneagram pretty quickly. But we had a work situation that happened this week. And, I'm an Enneagram 8. And so when you move to an unhealthy place, as an Enneagram 8, you move to the 5, which means you start getting away from people and then putting a huge wall up. And I noticed, like, I'm on the way to church and going, this isn't good. I can feel it.
Yeah.
So, and I want to go, I'm fine. Yeah.
I'm okay.
I'm good. You're the problem. And for me, it's like, okay, I need to actually lean in and go, you know what? I feel hurt.
Yeah.
Which is hard for an Enneagram 8 to say.
Yes. Yes, it is. Those 8s.
So, yeah, no.
My dad's an 8, so I'm around 8s a lot. So,
a lot,
yes.
yeah.
Oh,
so it was, you talk about moving, as an Enneagram 4, you move into a depressive state when you get unhealthy.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's huge. Identity is important. We had a guy, his name was Brian Phipps. He talks a lot about character and calling, and how character and calling combined creates impact. And he talks about the whole Genesis 3 piece where we lost our identity, and so we lose intimacy and that peace with Jesus, and the piece of am I worth it? Am I valuable? Do I have what it takes?
Right.
And we substitute that for like cheap knockoffs, which for us is usually sex and power, and so we're looking at relationships to fill us rather than God filling us. And so identity is huge for us as leaders,
right.
Especially in a place if we are operating out of an identity that doesn't match up with our identity being hidden in Christ. It tends to leak onto others.
Right. And and that's key with leaders, and then why I'm so passionate again about the Enneagram and all of these things, because the more you can know what your tendencies are in those moments of unhealth, or when you can start see those red flags, then you don't go and hide. Because you go back to the Genesis 3 situation, the shame makes them hide.
Yeah.
But God comes after him and he's like, where are you? He wants to hang out. Like, he's like, let's just talk about what you just did. Like, not like, he knows what you did. You might as well just talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think what depression a lot of times in those unhealthy places start to do is it moves us back away from being in that communion and relationship with Jesus and the intimacy, when he's the one who can take that from us, that feeling of being unworthy, the feeling of not being inadequate or anything. And I would say even those tools, like going back, how did you get out of depression? Spiritual gifts. So my dad does this whole leadership course, and it's pretty phenomenal. But one of the pieces in there is spiritual gifts, built to run, and you go through all these other things. And spiritual gifts, that was the first time I took it. And I realized, these things that I thought were a detriment, these things that made me feel like, I'm not, like, nobody understands this, or actually, like, with discernment is one of my top ones. But that's understanding kind of good and evil. You can feel it. It sounds all woo-woo. Like, it's like people are like, ooh, I can feel it. There's like weirdness in the room, and people are like, what? Yeah. But I could, but I didn't know how to explain that. But then once I took this spiritual gifts test, I saw discernment, saw like truth from, a lie. Like, I'm able to pick those up, and I'm like, the enemy used the gift that God gave me to try and make me feel isolated, not like I was crazy or like, but God's like, no, I gave you that gift to use for my kingdom. Yeah. And when I realized those things, the prophetic or teaching and wisdom, like those top spiritual gifts for me, it was a game changer of realizing my identity. And so I would say one of the pieces is, it's not everything, but learning spiritual gifts, learning Enneagram, learning love languages, all of those things are tools to help us get out of a space to remember our identity so that we can go out and love our neighbors better.
That's good. So the gifts are given for impact, but you got the fruit of the Spirit. So gifts are given, but the fruit are developed, right?
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
The fruit of the Spirit are the pieces of our character that, which I find there's 9 of them, and there's 9 Enneagram numbers.
So I have a whole thing on this.
Talk to me.
Yes.
Let's get into the Enneagram.
Yes, I do. Because I like to see patterns. I really believe God is a God of order and creativity.
Yeah.
And so if we start looking into things, like, I know people can make something out of nothing. But when when I discovered the Enneagram and I really jumped in like full throttle, Lord bless everyone around me, because I always talk about it's like, well, I'm an Enneagram 4. I was like, you're an Enneagram 9. And I'm like always talking to people about it because I'm like, this is such a cool thing. And then I'm like, oh. And I was studying the fruit of the Spirit for Arise. I run this the monthly women's event. And that season, I was like, well, we have 9 events every year from September to May. It's once a month. We're going to go through the fruit of the Spirit. And so I was like, there's 9. And I was like, there's 9 Enneagrams. And so I started working through like which one is which. And it's interesting because now I've seen other people do it. And some things I have different for than other people. But I'm like, it's interesting to me that there's 9 and 9.
Yeah.
I like to think it's purposeful, but I also am open to anything.
Well, so one of the biggest things that I hear about the Enneagram is that, oh, that's like the Christian horoscope. I don't know if Jesus followers should do that thing. Like, what's your thoughts about that?
Okay, I got this the other day. It was very interesting before a podcast. I was like, oh, I don't know if you do the Enneagram. And she's just like,
no, that's a
pagan.
dream catcher.
Yeah, it's like pagan. Have you done this?
Well, it looks like one,
yeah, it does actually. I will say that. Yeah. But we can acknowledge that and keep moving.
Yeah, right.
No, but I mean, I've done the history on it. Like, I've looked at it. Yeah. But my thing is, at the end of the day, the enemy, okay, first of all, people celebrate Christmas, all these like pagan things, but we have used it to celebrate Jesus. Yeah. So we can take what the enemy meant for evil and take it out of hands and slap him with it. Like,
all truth is God's truth at the end of the day, right? That's what
I tell people all the time. And so I told her that because that's my ideal. Like, whether, some people don't like to do yoga, but I feel like there's a way you can do yoga that's honoring of God and focusing on God. We don't have to take these amoral things that like people can take badly
and ascribe morality to them,
and just X them totally out, and when they're actually a helpful tool that we could use to further the kingdom. So I always go back to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. If we don't understand how God's created us, like, we can still love people without knowing the Enneagram and the spiritual gifts. Yeah. But I do believe it's a better tool that if we know how God's created us and we love Him, and then we love how He has made us, instead of thinking like, oh, this is so unfortunate I'm made this way, which I thought for many years of my life. Some days I still think that, but I remember my identity. Yeah. And so, but if we know that, then I can love my neighbor better. So if all truth is God's truth, and it's something that the Enneagram, I believe it is helpful for me, maybe not everyone, it's helpful for me to love you better, to love my neighbor better, then God gets the glory from that, and we are called to be reconcilers. And I believe that we can reconcile relationships between each other. We can understand each other by using these tools to further the kingdom and bring unity, which is another piece of my heart. So it's like I don't want to just cross things off when God's like, you know what, we could probably use this. But I always go back to Romans 14 where it says, for you it'd be beneficial, for me it's not, or for Paul's I can eat meat, but there are people who can't eat meat and not stumble. So some people just shouldn't do it. The Holy Spirit gets to move where He wants to move. And I think it's a pretty awesome thing. But if we give God the glory and use it for good, and not just ourselves, but people around us, I think it's a pretty awesome thing in our tool belt, to be honest.
I'm interrupting this amazing interview because I want to tell you about something really quickly. I want to tell you about Followers Made. A lot of us have been in church for a very long time, and yet we are, we have problems because we don't exactly know what it means to follow Jesus. And it's not actually sitting in a pew or sitting in a seat listening to a preacher. It's actually developing the gifts and call that God has on our lives, and also developing intimacy with Jesus. Now, dudes, I know that word intimacy seems a little weird, but give it a chance. We want to help you develop your relationship with Jesus and develop the call of God that is on your life. And so we would love for you to text 480-531-9015 and do this for me. Text HELLO to 480-531-9015. I'm going to get back to you, and we would love to set up a time to show you what that system, Followers Made, looks like and how we might help you follow Jesus better in your context. Now back to the interview. Yeah, John Calvin said, without knowledge of self, there's no knowledge of God. And without knowledge of God, there's no knowledge of self. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, we need both.
Absolutely.
And self-awareness is huge.
Right.
And I just did the George Bushism with the Trump-ism. Huge.
Huge.
No, just playing. So yeah, I think, when I look at the Enneagram, it's been super helpful for me to go, okay, here's the spots of what it looks like for Chesley to be in health, and here's spots where if I'm not being healthy, now I can recognize them in the moments. Right. And so let's just kind of run down the numbers really quickly.
Okay, yeah.
So 1 through 9, there's 9 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start it off. What's number 1?
Okay, the 1 is the reformer. I always use that word first instead of perfectionist.
Yeah, I use improver. Yeah, perfectionist is the evil side. It's the shadow side,
like,
right?
Yeah, because if you try to tell a 1, sorry for all the 1s out there, they're just like, what's a reformer? I like improver. I was like, everything has its order and it's organized and it's good, and like things are right and wrong, black and white with 1s. I typecast Bible characters.
Do you really?
I do. It's pretty fun though, because then it makes
you're a nerd.
I am a nerd. Thank you. I've been trying to tell people this. I'm glad it's finally out there. I was like, I promise you, I'm a nerd. I'm an Enneagram nerd and I'm a Bible nerd. So you add those two together and it's pretty fun. Yeah. Because then I'm like reading people. I'm like, Paul is a 1.
Oh,
Paul's
really?
A 1.
Paul's on an 8?
No, Peter's an 8.
Peter's an 8.
People think that Peter's a 6, and I'm like, what? No, Peter's an 8. He's like, I'm gonna chop this guy's ear off. Oh, and then he's like, oh, oops. He's like, I didn't think about that. This is just a bull in a china shop. But then also pretty such a great, powerful leader So I think Peter's an 8. But 1 for Paul, he's always like, I've done everything correct this whole time, right and wrong, and I didn't see any of it. Then God changed it, and then he was able to use all of that right and wrong, good and bad, in such a way. But Paul was just like, boom, he was good at it. Yeah. So anyways, but yes, the improver, how would you describe that? I like the improver. Can you?
Yeah, so 1s can walk right into the room, right? And they see everything wrong.
That's true.
Right off the bat. And so what ends up happening is turn outward is great for an organization, turn inward, it's horrible for yourself.
Right.
And so then you start projecting that onto everything you do. Mm-hmm. But if you're there, you go, hey, everything is everybody has feet of clay, everything's not perfect. We can consistently make improvements along the way. Right. It's super healthy. Mm-hmm. What I like about the 1 is that they have the healthy aspects of the 7 when they're healthy. So they're actually a lot of fun.
Right,
so
they
I know
are
some healthy 1s.
Yeah, my older sister's a 1, and then her husband's a 7. Yeah. And it's interesting because I always thought that they were both 7s. Yeah. And then I was like, no, she's a 1, but she has the 7, and he's 7 with. So that's where they kind of seem very similar, but they're not. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting growing up. I'm a 4 to grow up with a 1 sister, especially as I go to 1 in health.
She goes to 4 in
unhealth. She knows. We know. We've talked about it. We're okay now.
There you go. Yeah.
But growing up, so I like that improver.
Yeah. Okay. So 1s are the improver. 2 is
the helper.
The helper.
Yeah. So 2, I love 2s because I am not a helper. 2s are fantastic because we all need different people around us, but 2s really see the things that need to get done, and they're just like, what do you need me to do to help create to get you to what you're needing it to be? Or just they love serving others. It's a beautiful gift because sometimes it's something I have to discipline myself to do. I'm like, let's go do this and let's dream up all the things. I was like, no, practical hospitality. Yeah. We're called to that. And 2s have this beautiful way of helping people feel seen, I believe. And then also being like, oh, they remember your coffee orders. Yeah. That's what I realize with 2s, they remember all these details because they want to bring you gifts. Yeah. And they love on you in that way. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. So
be more like you.
Steven, he's our production guy. He's behind the camera. His wife is a 2. Oh, and we're walking as a family doing exercise at
what, 10 o'clock at night one night? Don't ask us why. Don't ask us why. But anyways, there's a wreck, and Renata like literally runs to them. I'm like, what if they're drunk? She didn't care. She's
I gotta help
straight
them.
there. So we're all stranded on the other side of the street.
Aww,
She's
Renata.
there helping them. And Stephen and I are looking at it. Thank God we have them there, because we would have just kept walking.
I know. I would have been concerned, but I don't think I would have ran.
Stephen's shaking his head like.
Yeah, he is.
So every number has a shadow side. It's where we go unhealthy, and unfortunately, the unhealthy part of it too is codependency.
Yes.
Right. So they become the codependent.
And as an independent human, as a 4, a lot of times, 2s. That's where I can sometimes. I've noticed with 2s, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah,
whoa.
you're like, I'm gone.
I gotta go. But it's actually like in that unhealth, especially if there's an unhealthy 2 and an unhealthy 4, that could be really bad. But the 2s can be more codependent. But they need. But what I say that is because 2s need people. I would say a lot of 2s are extroverted because they need people to fulfill what they're called to do and like who they are. They're like, I'm here to help serve other people or give gifts or just to help. You need people to help.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because 2s and 7s get confused a lot of times when they try and take the test and locate themselves. But I'm like, no, 2s need people to serve. 7 needs people to entertain.
Yeah.
There's a difference. Yeah. They both need people.
But they need people
for different reasons.
Very different reasons. Yes.
Reasons.
So number 3. Yeah.
The achiever.
Yes.
Do you call it that?
Yes, I call it the achiever. Because everybody knows that they're there to, win.
They are there to win.
Yeah.
I like 3s because they're just like, we got to get stuff done, and now it's the next goal, and now it's the next goal, and they like to do the check mark list. What are you? Oh, sorry, I'm talking to people behind the.
You're talking to Steven. Steven's a 5.
Behind the camera.
Steven's a 5.
Okay.
He's really great.
Okay,
yeah.
I was wondering this whole time. I needed to know.
So it's hilarious when we're in a meeting with Steven. He brings the 5 out. He's like, so what did you think about this? Did you think about that? What about this? I'm like, bro, I don't know.
I haven't gotten there yet, okay?
I make things up as I go.
I'm just saying it as it's coming to my head.
No, I need that because otherwise I'd make everything up as I go.
Yeah, that's true. Same. Yeah, so 3s they really are great at goal setting. They're success driven in a really great way. I think they can really pull people up. They're great leaders because they're like, we see what we can do, and they can really bring people with them on this journey of like goal setting and moving forward, because they also like to check it off, and they're gonna look good doing it because they are image conscious. And I don't mean that in a bad way. There is a shadow side, of course, but I think that they like everything to look good, which I think is fantastic.
They do. So that's the shadow side of a 3 though, is that they spin everything even to themselves, right? So if you have eyes, plagiarize, but I won't do that here, right? So that I heard that on Michael Hyatt and Donald Miller's interview on Business Made Simple. They were talking about it, and they're both 3s. But I work with the 3. He's my boss. So
yes,
3s and 8s together, if they're in line, man, they can rule the world.
They can, but they will spend the money quickly.
Well, he's Dutch, so
that works out.
He's super cheap. He keeps me in balance. I'm like, if I live in the tension with you, wherever that is, like, we're in a good place.
3s are great. They're also entertainers, I feel like, too, and I think 3s and 7s can get confused along the way, but I think it's what they're more goal driven than 7s.
And that's the shadow side of a 3, is they become like the hypocrite because they're putting the mask on and they're not letting you see what's actually going on underneath.
And which is so interesting, and I don't know if you've gone into like the triads before, but the heart triad, the mind triad, and the gut, the instinct triad, and the 3s are right in the middle of the heart triad. So you would think they're like these emotional beings, but they do everything not to let their emotions. If they're unhealthy, they try to shut it completely off. A healthy 3 will use those emotions to be a better leader and to move forward. But 3s have this ability to be like, nope. No feels, I'm out, let's just go. And it feels, it's confusing to them along the way. So,
especially if you're a wing 4.
Especially.
And what is a 4?
Finally, we get to talk about me.
Right, there we go.
This is the 4 life.
Yes.
We're like, we go so introspective. So the 4 is the individualist.
I call it the romantic. I don't like the word individualist.
I like individualist for this reason.
Okay.
Because Also, I don't know if you've taken Strength Finders.
I have.
But I have individualization as one of my top ones, which made a lot more sense when I took the Enneagram as well. Because I love to know why everything works.
Yeah.
Like I see the beauty in absolutely every different leaf on a tree.
Okay.
It's like, oh, there's so much beauty in that one thing.
So it's not a selfish piece.
No, I think it can
seeing
be
people for who they are. Well, that would be the shadow side, right?
It's my shadow side. But I would say that the individualist, like I see everyone as this beautiful, and I think why identity is so important to me as well is because I see the beauty in the fingerprint of how everybody's made, and how God made them uniquely. Like uniqueness is huge to me. So I think that's uniqueness and individual like helps. I think in that, if you look at it that way, it helps understand the individualist, I guess. The romantic's 100%. So I will also agree with that because we're always in La La Land and we like create these movies and I could be sitting like going on a car ride. I remember being in Germany when I was in school over there. I was in school in London, but we went to Germany and I was like sitting on a train. And I had my headphones in and I had my music in and I was just like sitting outside the train and everything was going by and I was like, I'm in a movie. Yes. Like I'm in a movie and I'm the star of the show. It's
like Breakfast with Tiffany's right here.
Like everybody else is supporting cast. Like and I think that fours literally do that because we romanticize life.
That's
like
fair.
We really do. And so my siblings even make fun of me. We were talking about it a couple weeks ago. They're like, oh yeah, Allie just staring out windows crying when she was growing up. I wish I understood the Enneagram back then. I think it would have helped all of us.
That's fair.
Because it's true, we romanticize everything. But with that, I think a lot of times the uniqueness, sometimes we feel like we are so unique that we're missing something that everybody else gets and has, and that it's like we don't fit in. Yeah. Like we don't get the world, and then we like recluse, and then we get introspective. Yeah, I always tell people like I just go like this. Like I just like focus this way and get, I don't really project as much on other people. I get like really intro, like very like what did I do and how could have this been, and then I have these like whole worlds playing in my head that are not reality. But then you get stuck in it. But we like to get stuck in that brokenness, which is help,
we all
but
do.
Also it's true. But they say that the fours, like I try to tell people, like the fours are so comfortable with like the dark,
the inner world,
the brokenness, the moody. We could live there all day. And some people are like, oh, I can't believe you just like talk about like suicide or something like that. Like you dealt with those things. I'm like, actually, I feel very comfortable talking about it. And if you want to talk about it with me, we can. Like, I'm here for you. Yeah, like let's talk about something fun.
We don't talk emotions here. No, just play it.
I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to do. I go to the depths so fast. It's like, but anyway, so that's the shadow side. I think we can go and we can stay there too long. Yeah. Because we almost find comfort in it.
Right. Yeah.
When we don't find comfort in the real world, we find comfort in the broken, weird places.
Well, see, I believe depression is identity fallout. So you're searching for that handlebar for identity. Who am I?
Right.
And if you don't have that, that's when so fours turn inward. They're called the depressive if they're turned inward and they're unhealthy. So what about a 5?
Right. So 5s, I have a pretty good 5 wing as well, which is great.
Do you?
I like my 3. My 3 helps me preach.
Yeah.
My 3 helps me do what I do, but the 5 wing is so fantastic because 5s just like go. 5s are the investigators. Yep. And I call them the Nancy Drews and the Sherlock Holmes of the group. And I love 5s. Some of my mentors are 5, and they love to gain knowledge. If they're interested, they're going to have all the knowledge you can get on it. So it's not like all 5s have they're just like brainy about everything, but they're like, no, they want to know everything, and they're looking at everything, and they see things like you were saying that we all miss or we're not even thinking about yet. They're such an asset to have around, and they're usually the MacGyvers. I found out like if 5s, like if they're excited about something and they're like, I know how to do this, they're like, they randomly know how to do crazy things because one time they went on this bunny trail on YouTube and bought books on it, and now they know how to do it. So the 5s are like that, but they also only have a certain amount of energy output every day. So they're just like, I only have this much energy, and every time I have a text message, an email, interaction with a human being, it's like ding, ding, ding. And like a nap's not going to help. A nap might just like bump them.
Right.
But like the only time they get to replenish is sleeping.
Yeah.
The whole night. Like,
the problem with the 5s, though, and this is the shadow side, is they think they have the least amount of energy on the Enneagram, but they don't. That's the 9.
Well, yeah. But, yeah.
So, like the 5s, and that's the problem with the 5s. Like the shadow side for the 5s is they become the Scrooges. I call them the misers, right? So they're always they're greedy. They're holding their resources closely.
Yeah, they don't want to. Yeah. That's such a good point. They do hold their resources very closely, but also something I think some of us could learn to do more often.
Yeah,
we could definitely learn from them.
A 5 in health, though, is super helpful. They do live more generously than most other numbers on the Enneagram.
Right.
So, but yeah, there's just this greed component.
But I also say 5s are very private.
Yeah.
And so they don't let people into this like world that they're working through. And so some 5s, you have to kind of really break in. You really have to push. And as a 4, which is so interesting to have like a little 5 wing. But like as a 4 who's so emotional, especially for a 5 wing 4, like that's weird because they're like private, but then like they don't want to have all the emotions, but they have that wing 4 that's like pulling them into the emo. And so I'm like, it's so interesting.
I'm looking at Steven over there.
A 5 wing 4.
That's why he's a creative, because he's got that 4.
And then he has like all the knowledge on it. But it's like an interesting like dynamic shift because you're right on that line of the heart triad and the mind triad, which is really interesting. So I enjoy 5s. I feel like because it's almost sometimes a little bit of a challenge to kind of like tap into what's going on, but it's always a wealth of knowledge. So
absolutely,
it's pretty cool.
So what about a 6?
Oh, our 6s.
Yes, my little brother's a 6.
What do you call the 6?
A loyalist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does everything based off of his relationship. I'm like, bro, nobody else is asking whether you should move somewhere because your friends are there. Your friends already moved away. Like, why are you still wanting to go? No, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation for a different day. But he makes all of his decisions based off of the relationships he has with people.
Right.
And obviously, I mean, part of that, there's a fear component to that.
Yeah.
But go.
Well, and that's why, honestly, I think they said that the most amount of people in prison are 6s.
Oh,
the majority of people in prison are 6s because they're so loyal to their people.
Well, there you go, Christian.
Yeah. So anyway, so the 6s, my brother's also a loyalist.
Okay.
And so it's like, no matter what, you could ask him and he'll show up. Like if you're his people, if 6s stay with their people, what they value with their community, like they like that, and they will give you everything, probably too much. But they do have that fear component because security is found in being loyal and having their people. So without that security, that's where they have this fear of having lack of security and lack of a net basically around them. And then that's when they catastrophize things and they're like, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And they go into this like fear-based way of living. So
that's awesome.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So what about a 7? 7's the enthusiast. We already talked about it a little bit.
7s. Yeah, I feel bad for 6s. I know we're the time we're gonna go, but we love you 6s.
Right.
Didn't mean to jip you on that
do.
one. 7s are the entertainers. 7s are, is that what you call them?
I call them the enthusiast, entertainers.
Yeah, enthusiast is way nicer.
Yeah.
It sounds better, you know?
It
just really does. 7s are just a ball full of joy. Like fun, they're fun. They want everyone to have fun around them. They want to be everybody. I call them a lot of times the master connectors. Like they know everybody and then they want everybody else to know everybody. Like they're just like, no, it'll be a party if we could get everyone to be friends with each other.
Right.
And then we can all hang out. And so it's like, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah, the only person that wants to be their number on the Enneagram is a 7.
Is a 7.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a 7.
Yeah.
Yes, they love it. They love being a 7.
Yes.
It's so good. but they do bring such joy to most situations, like to situations, and can be lighthearted. But I think sometimes they, on the opposite side of that, they can lean too much into trying to feel like they have to be the fun person, that they never really tap into they don't want to feel pain. They don't want to even feel that something couldn't be fun all the time. But I think that they get kind of exhausted feeling like if they don't bring the fun, then they don't have worth in the situation. And so I think that they bring a lot of energy to get things done, and they're really excited about things. I think the downside of 7s can be the shadow side, I guess, is a better way to say it. The 7s can be like in the moment, they're so excited about a project. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And then like a week later, you're like, well, are we doing this? Because you said, they're like, what?
Wait, yeah.
Huh? Because they're not their commitment things need to be worked on. But in the moment, they fully loved it.
It's like, I don't want you to nail me down, bro.
I know. They're like, I was like, but you said you were going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, I don't even remember that. I was like, because they were so pumped in the moment, and they meant it in the moment. But they didn't commit in their heart.
That's fair.
When we did. So it's interesting. So
so the Enneagram 9.
Yeah, the 9. You're gonna jump the 8. Okay, you challenger. Don't you want to talk about it?
We'll go to the 8.
The challenger.
I don't like that name.
What do you like?
Of course, I like the protector.
Oh.
So because the challenger is more negative.
Interesting.
In connotation. Yeah. I try to go where the positive piece is, because they don't get enough positive reinforcement.
Spoken like an 8.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I actually can see that. I can see how people can have issues with an 8.
Yeah, everybody has issues with 8s.
Yeah, you guys, I feel like 8s kind of like that though.
Yeah, no, no. Actually, we don't.
Okay.
I don't think we do. Okay. I think at the end of the day,
Steven,
this is not your show, bro. No, I'm just playing. I think we have the reputation, right? Of heart, whatever. Yeah. Everybody knows, right?
Yes.
So, but I think at the end of the day, like we want people to know we love them and we care about them, and we'll go to war over our people.
Absolutely. And that's what I really love about 8s. Like I said, my dad's an 8. Some of the women on my leadership team for Arise are 8s, 7s, or 7/8s. And so it's really fun to be around them, because if they're in, they are with you, and they will make things happen. Whenever you're like, I don't know if it can happen, they're like, let's do it. We're doing it. Like, let's go. Yeah. And it's such an encouragement to have on a team, but then also they don't really always care about what everybody else thinks if they feel like it's right, and not even in a bad way. It's like when they feel like it's right, they're going to do it. Yeah. And as a 4, I'm like, oh no, what's everyone else feeling about it? Like, I can feel the room.
Right.
I can
tell that person. You stand back there, we'll take the heat.
Which
we'll
I love it, because 4s and 8s are
yeah.
actually extremely passionate, the two most passionate. So if 4s and 8s are on the same wavelenghth and on the same, it goes awesome. Yeah. If they're not, it's a totally different story. Which is
very hard to do for 4s and 8s to be on the.
Yes, it is. Yeah. But it's a great, 8s are great. I love protector. That's a great name for it. I really like that.
And everybody knows the shadow side of an 8, right? We burn everything to the ground.
Everything.
Everything.
Single thing.
Yes, everything. So enough about us.
Okay. Right when we get to the shadow side. And the 9, please. The 9s.
No, yeah.
The peacemakers.
It's like, oh, look at the time.
Look at that. Okay, jump into the last one. I see what you did there. Yeah. We all see.
Yeah. We got it. But we don't have much time. So I do want to get to the 9.
The 9s are the peacemakers. And when I say makers, peacemakers. I think a lot of 9s feel like they're peacekeepers. Yeah. But I think the strength of a 9 is making peace in any situation that they're in.
That's really good.
And so that's their superpower. I kind of see all these things as superpowers if we use them in the right way. And so I think that 9s are like that. Any situation, I think if you are somebody who takes the Enneagram and you're not sure what you are because all the things come out kind of even every time you take a test.
You're a 9.
You're a 9. You're a 9 because 9s are they love to be so at peace with people that they can kind of meet you where you are. They're the chameleons. And it's a part of them. They're not trying to necessarily be you. They just want to be at peace with you. Yeah. And so they're kind of like, they're very non-judgmental. Yep. they have this activist spirit where they want to create that peace. Like a healthy 9 will be more of an activist of being like, how do we bring peace to the situation? My younger sister is a peacemaker, is a 9.
My wife is.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And she had an older sister that's a 1, and then me a 4, where we blew up all the time. So the third child kept the peace, or tried to make the peace, if you will. So I think that's the thing, and I don't know. What do you think the shadow side is of a 9?
Oh, the shadow side of a 9 is the fact that they lose all sense of like trying, because they got to keep peace inside themselves, so they can't get angry even with themselves. They can't show emotion. And so my wife is peace at all costs, and so she's the least confrontational number on the Enneagram, and I'm the most confrontational number on the Enneagram.
Which is so interesting. That they're right next to each other.
Yeah. So especially when we're dealing with our children.
Is she? What wing is she?
She's a wing 1.
Okay, and you're a 7.
So I'm a wing 7.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. My parents are 8 and 9, but my dad's an 8 9. My dad's an 8-7, but my mom's a 9-8.
Oh yeah.
So it's like the 9s like suppress, and they suppress, and then all of a sudden her 8 wing just like boom, boom, and we're like, what just happened?
What happened?
Mayday. No, Mother, are you okay?
My wife very much goes inward, and I have to pull it out of her.
Yeah.
So I stopped asking, "What are you thinking?" and I started asking, "What are you feeling?"
I know. I like how you actually, you corrected it earlier. You said, I believe that identity has to do with depression. And I was like, I tell people I feel.
Yeah.
Me telling people I feel is me knowing.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is going to happen. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
So I think being aware of that within your own Enneagram, like I think, I feel, I believe, there's different verbiage that you probably more naturally say based off of your Enneagram and your heart triad.
Like, I do use the I feel a lot, but I'm like, I don't feel a thing. If I feel, that's not good. I think. I sense. I believe. No, I know it's so bad. So obviously we're running out of time. But I would love. How do people get aware of you? Where do they go online?
I'm on Instagram more than anything.
Instagram. So... I have not figured Instagram out. I figured TikTok out. I love TikTok, but
well, then Instagram, we can just help each other. I'm on TikTok. I mean, I could get lost there for way too long. Lord help me. But yes, Instagram is where I am at ali.gentry, ali.gentry, Gentry, and then Facebook, but also my website's aligentry.com, and it shows kind of what I'm up to, where I'm speaking, and also Arise when that's happening. So,
yeah, Arise is in Phoenix. You should check it out. Ali Gentry is going to blow up on the scene pretty quickly. It's going to be really cool. We should do this again.
Yes,
it's fun.
I'm in. I know.
Cool.
This was so fun.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for listening to our interview today. We're so excited to be able to bring these to you weekly. If you'd like to stay up to date on our blogs, on our podcasts, even some of our social media, or if you would like to say hi to me, you can reach out to us at 480-531-9015. Again, that's 480-531-9015. We know that when leaders develop fulfillment in their own lives, that they begin to develop fulfillment in others. And when fulfilled leaders lead, they lead and develop hope. And the world needs a lot more hope. So here's the deal. We would love to see you next week, and let's lead full together.